Talk a little bit more about the past ones, present, and future. We're happy to entertain questions and so on. But the way we're going to work is, first of all, let me introduce our panelists to you. Rob Leverty, to my left here. Rob's the president of the Niagara Escarpment Foundation. Partner Linda Pym, the NEF, has been incredibly helpful to the Escarpment Corridor Alliance, and the work that they have done has been generational on the Niagara Escarpment. So we walk in their footsteps to many extent. Rob and his partner Andy live in the Beaver Valley on a working farm there and have for how many decades now? 5 decades, and more than whatever. Yeah, Rob's a young guy. Certified organic farm. They've got a heritage conservation easement on it. The Bruce Trail runs through their property and has for the last 52 years here. Carl Cosak here, full-time cattle rancher, 50 years at Peace Valley Ranch Limited. He's now the retired trail boss for Rawhide Adventures after 35 years, and was chair of NDACT, the Northumberland Agricultural and Community Task Force. How many of you here, we've got seats up front here and a couple at the sides. How many of you here have ever heard of the Mega Quarry down near Shelburne? Now, NDACT was the organization that worked from 2009 to 12 on the Mega Quarry battle down there. I met Carl's wife earlier today. Why does she say you sort of wear rose-colored glasses, Carl? Can we get to that later?
Positive mindset.
Positive mindset. Okay, we like that around. You're a proud dad of 4, and currently NDACT's community liaison for the community engagement agreement with Strata Aggregates, because there's a second part to the story that we'll jump into. You all got to meet Jodi earlier today. Her bio is extensive. She is one of the true leaders in not just in this country, but globally, and the kind of work that we're doing. So while Silvertip and the Canmore area is not on the escarpment, I thought it would be a mistake not to tap into some of her expertise and experience, because the lessons that they've learned in some of the micro corridors that have been formed are directly applicable to work here as well. So welcome, Jodi. So let me say, why did we want to run this panel to start with success stories? There's really 2 big reasons. First of all, a lot of people have given up hope on some of the hotspots that we've been working on, like the Castle Glens and Talismans of the world, and believe that nothing's going to change, nothing will change, or whatever. And that's just not the case, or it doesn't have to be the case. And the way we learn is by examining situations like this, where people have been able to bring communities together, bring reason together, bring science to the table, bring financial muscle to the table, and work their way through it. And some of the examples we're going to talk about today were real hard slogging. They were tough work, but they accomplished what they set out to do. I, as leader of the ECA and founder of the organization, I'm absolutely committed to make sure that there are plenty of these future success stories here for us to talk about. Rest assured, that's just, some of these things are never going to happen on our watch here. But we're going to do it in a way that's professional and progressive and contributive and collaborative here. So we'll get into talking about that. From a logistics standpoint, if anybody does need to slip out or whatever, that's fine. Again, the washrooms are downstairs, and we've probably broken fire code all day long. And here the exits are downstairs as well. So that's that. I thought after I had this designed, I thought I'm completely missing the ball on something, and that is the greatest success story of the Niagara Escarpment is the Niagara Escarpment. And nobody better than to chat for a moment about that. Rob, June 12th marked the 40th anniversary of the Niagara Escarpment plan. Rob wrote one of the most eloquent letters here to Doug Ford and Mark Carney and many others, outlining a lot of the history that they probably never even knew, they probably had forgotten about. But walk us back a little bit, the purpose of the act, what was so special about it, what do we need to know and to celebrate from the escarpment itself?
Okay, Good.
Yeah.
I'm going to just welcome.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. And Rebecca, nice to meet you. As small as beautiful, so welcome. If you don't want to hear about the Niagara Escarpment from me, you can just go out and buy a new book on the history of the Niagara Escarpment.
Yes, please do.
Professor Avery, and that's a milestone. In the 60s, late 60s and early 70s, there was tremendous outpouring of support to protect the Niagara Escarpment from our fellow citizens. And that forced the government in 1973, the Conservative government, to pass the Niagara Escarpment Act. And it was important that it was supported by all three political parties at the time. And the purpose of the act is to maintain the continuous natural corridor, and that any development be compatible with the natural environment. And there's key objectives here. One of them is to maintain and enhance water quality and the character of the waterways, to protect ecological sites, to promote outdoor recreation. This was an existing use to promote that kind of. And but again, you go back to the issue of the purpose is to maintain the continuous natural corridor. That's the Bible. And so in this it instructed the government to come up with a plan. So they hired staff, some of the finest environmental planners, young planners across Canada came and worked. And they came up with a proposed plan. Here it is, there's the escarpment. It was 3 times as large as that, the proposed plan. In 1978, when it was given out, there was a huge backlash. And so the government panicked. It's a minority conservative government. They panicked, and they literally took a chainsaw and cut 2/3 of it out. So where I live, to the west, in the Beaver Valley, beautiful, important wetlands, forests were left out. So what did we learn the first lesson? If we lose, we've probably lost it forever. So we've always got to win. So they came up with a new plan. And with that crisis, a coalition of environment groups came together and said, my God, we've got to save some of this escarpment. So one of them is the Canadian Nature Federation, the Canadian Environmental Law Association, Ontario Nature, which was then the Federation of Ontario Naturalists. And they came together as a coalition. And they made some key points. One of them was at the beginning, they're not working for any political party. We're not involved in political partisanship. Number 2, I think that they felt that they had to engage with the public. So there were public hearings from 1979 to 1982. And so public engagement was the driving force to attend all hearings. But these groups, national, provincial, didn't have the local connections. So they decided by 1980 to carry on at the hearings. They actually hired me to go up and down the escarpment to every public hearing to engage the public citizens, to get landowners, groups like the Christian Farmers Union or the preservation of agricultural lands, which is very important down in Niagara, to get them to come to the hearings, to engage and participate in this democratic process. I think we learned that the key thing through those hearings was documentation and to keep the lights on. If we keep the lights on and see everything that's happening, we're gonna win. And so after those hearings in 1985, I'm pleased to say, the province, with the support of, again, all 3 political parties, June 12, 1985, passed the final Niagara Escarpment Plan. And so here we've got a lesson to learn is we all thought, well, we could just all go home, I can go back to my farm, never have to worry about this again.
We'll come to some of that.
Yeah. So briefly, I'll just say that we learned that it never ends. Within 2 years, the Liberals win a huge majority, and everybody starts to rip away at the plan, the final plan. And so we have to re-energize that coalition. And it was a tremendous battle between 1987 and 1994. Good news, in 1990, UNESCO recognized this as a success story, designated it as a world biosphere. And then in 1994, the NDP government re-engaged the plan, approved it, and I think that was a key moment when people looked back and said, no, we can't rip this away anymore. This is too much of a success.
Put that success into context, Rob. In terms of across Canada, kind of large landscape protection at the time. Like how unique was this?
This was Canada's first environmental land use plan. And
This
it remains that too.
Yeah, this is quite exceptional in what's happened here.
And it's a world biosphere. It is recognized for its continuous natural corridor and so many other features.
So I'm sure we'll come back. We can come back to some more questions on that. But you alluded to the fact that you know it's never ending. So we'll just keep going while you're on your feet here. Many people are not familiar that there was a battle for the Beaver Valley that dates back many decades now. And that story pretty much went underground and got forgotten for a long time. And I'd like to go back through that with you, Rob, and tell us the story of Epping's Commons.
Yeah. So here's the watershed.
I'll trade places.
Watershed of the Beaver Valley. So you heard this morning about the importance of water, and the Act says it's to maintain and enhance the water quality. So the escarpment is here on either side. So it's unique in that it's a re-entrant escarpment valley. You have to go to East Africa to see something so unique. And it's about water. But what's not on this map? What do we not see here?
I'm sorry, what's re-entrant, whatever you said?
Well, the escarpment re-entrant valley it's on both sides
Oh.
of the valley. Well,
Rudy River would be a smaller example of that, even to a lesser degree going up Silver Creek here. But Beaver Valley, when you look at topographic maps, go look at the map over in the corner and see how it jumps out. It's like nothing else on the escarpment.
So is that Lake Eugenia? What is that?
That's Lake Eugenia,
Okay.
yes. So between 1973 and 79, a company consolidated 5 farms, and it was about 300 acres now, and they proposed a huge development called Epping Commons. 46 houses, a hotel, golf courses, tennis courts, and townhouses. It really doesn't make much difference how many, because these things always grow larger. And that was right in the middle of the western slopes of the Beaver Valley, right smack in the middle of the wildlife.
Just north of Talisman, that's correct?
Yeah, and so we realized that, you know, some of the arguments, continuous national court, weren't working entirely. And so to outreach, what we did was we did a hydrological study, the first of its kind. And what we found is that what's more important than all these streams is the groundwater. This was a regional groundwater area. Masses of water, amounts of water flow into the Beaver River. And that this development would cause irreparable damage to the river and the watershed. And so my neighbor, Herman McConnell, he came to the Beaver Valley in 1911. He hunted and fished. And he said, you know, what we should now do is realize that this is a threat to the Beaver Valley and our watershed. And what we needed to do is do a cultural shift and start working with the Anglers and Hunters Association. So Herman and I decided we would go to all the chapters in as many parts of Ontario as possible and get their support, because this development was also a threat to fishing and hunting, and we heard this theme this morning. And they were incredibly important in bringing them on side. And so in 1985, I'm pleased to say, the government decided to take that development And it also attracted strip development all the way up the escarpment, which is another lesson you need to learn, is that these developments attract other developments, more green. And so the government in 1995 took that off, and what I think is another thing we learned is it needs to then go into public hands. And so the province bought it, and said that it was going to become part of the Niagara Escarpment system. And Herman and I, once the government had bought the land, we walked across these streams. Beautiful day, because we won, and Herman would point, well, that was where the golf course was going to be. That's where the tennis courts were. Oh, there's the hotel. And as we got to a gorge, all of a sudden, up comes this huge buck, a magnificent deer. And the deer, his nostrils flaring, the eyes are glaring and bulging, the steam coming off the deer, and the antlers are swaying back and forth. And he looks at Herman, and he looks at me, and then poof, he goes. And Herman said to me, "Did you hear what the deer said?" And I shook my head, and Herman said, "The deer said, thank you for saving the Niagara Escarpment." And so I'm here today to thank ECA and everything you're doing to save the Niagara Escarpment. All of you, it's a collective voice. And I would also say that at this moment, as a lesson I would learn, it's something that Dwight Eisenhower pointed out, the former general and president. He was remembered for the phrase the industrial military complex, but he also said you can never win a war if you're pessimistic. And I think that's my final message today, is you have to be optimistic. There were many dark days over the last 50 years where we thought we couldn't win. But we had to be optimistic. And so I'm optimistic because today this is such an amazing event. I'm optimistic about what you and all your colleagues are doing. And I'm optimistic of people like yourselves coming out in support this kind of event. It's incredible that ECA has the credibility and the financial resources to fight the coming battles which are going to come.
Well, Rob, we'll come back to this, but thank you for those comments, and we'll try to get a few more lessons learned at the end. Did you have a quick question here?
I don't know if it's quick. Hydrological studies, what kind of shut down Epping's Commons project, right? It showed that it would be, why isn't that argument, or is it, or where are we applying it to Talisman or applying it to Castle Glen?
Definitely. Why don't we come back to that at the end,
Okay.
here, because I think it's sort of update a little bit on where things are. So, yeah, Tim?
I'm just curious on this, continue the story, because I don't know the story. Was that land that was proposed to be developed, was that designated within the Niagara Escarpment Commission? Was it planned and zoned not to be developed?
It was a very good point. It was in the proposed plan. It was to be natural and protection.
And did that have an effect on the government's willingness to say no?
I think it made it more difficult.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
I
it
think-
wasn't, it's a kind of another lesson learned. The NEC isn't the be all end all, as we heard this morning.
Exactly. And to be quite frank with you, the Niagara Escarpment Commission at the last minute voted for the development.
Oh.
They totally betrayed us. But
Wow.
there's another lesson, is you don't confuse the plan with the commission.
Okay.
We're here to support, I'm here to support the plan.
That happened at Castle Glen as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Committee staff against it at Castle Glen, and then they commission overruled that. Okay, we're going to switch gears. We'll have time to come back to lots of questions at the end. Carl, you have an amazing story with the Megacori, and really sad that one of our directors, Tom Eisenhower, could not be here today, but he had a big role to play in the outcome of this. But Carl, where are we talking about, and why are these potato lands so incredibly important to us?
Well, I'm completely humbled by your collective stories, because you leave such legacy for generations to come, while ours was really a small location fight in the big scheme of environmental protection. Those lands and the water underneath it really became a slogan for us to argue the proposal of the mega quarry, because we could frame that into a food and water first discussion that everybody that we would talk to could relate to. Food and water first. We had politicians sitting in those potato fields completely honest, saying, I never knew where my potato or French fry came from. So we could really connect those dots of making an issue mean something to everybody. Melanchthon, second smallest township or second smallest population in Ontario, was picked by the Baupost out of Boston, with $23 billion worth of funding behind them, to establish this quarry, which you see in the bottom right, had almost a 40-kilometer circumference. So
this is superimposed on the GTA here, but that gives you a sense of the size of what it was going to.
That was one of those fabulous volunteers within the system to create relatable storylines. So it all starts, nothing starts getting everybody's attention. The real heroes for this are all these local people who ran and funded the first brochures that had to look a little flashy, not just black and white, and give the image that NDACT was going places and things to do. They ran in the wintertime, rural roads, stuffing mailboxes. The early commitment to get NDACT on the map and make us a player in this discussion goes all to the local folks who, since 2006, 3 years before we knew what was going on, had that indigenous sense that something was going on. So that was that first sort of marker where at Tim Hortons you would sit and talk and say, okay, what's going on? Do you know what's going on? So those things, you just cannot highlight for us that without that local enthusiasm, connection, and getting your local people motivated, it's very tough to bring in outside expertise and then create an issue. It has to come from local. So rose-colored glasses, we're 100% supportive of positive messaging. So rather than fight against aggregate, and I had the pleasure of meeting with Maureen Miller, who was the executive of Ontario Sandstone and Gravel Association, and she said, it's really good that you're not making this issue about aggregate, because then our organization would have to step in and argue against your point. So by making it for agricultural land and for water protection, etc., and deliver a message that we could take to Toronto and to decision makers, kept them on the sidelines. So positive messaging, and I find this being now a dozen years ago or more, there's so much negativity everywhere that if you can create an atmosphere today where you have a mission for something instead of against something, it's a lot easier on everybody's mental health to participate, because it's just more fun when you don't bitch all the time and have something to celebrate. Case in point for me was Environmental Teachers Federation. On one of the journeys into Toronto to get more support, I was invited to be there, and the union rep came up before me, and it was Dalton McGuinty in government at the time. And I remember him, 400 people or so in the auditorium, bringing out these t-shirts and saying, this is what you all need to wear when we go to Queen's Park on whatever day. And he held it up and it said, report card, Dalton McGuinty, failure, 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 and the only check mark he got was to be in bed with bankers.
Oh.
So I thought to myself, if I'm Dalton McGuinty, I know I'm supposed to be the premier for everybody, but I'm going to step into into an outside forum where there's 4,000 or 5,000 people wearing these t-shirts, you have to just take a breath and say, I'm not wanted here. So the lesson out of this for us was not to yell at those people and call them stupid who held the keys to a solution. So Dalton McGinty was very good to us. Kathleen Wynne was very good to us. And she elevated this thing to cabinet, gave us the forum. There's a ton of things to be appreciative of. If you think, you know, we run a cattle ranch, we ride horses for a living, and I get to go to Queen's Park and talk to, at the time, the NDP caucus. And afterwards, Peter Tabbins took me aside and says, well, you had your day, now I'm going to have mine, and I'm going to tell you how you need to talk to us. So it was a great lesson. Mike Schreiner provided that same guidance that somebody who doesn't play in that forum regularly could do well with, and we learned. So that's a great shot. How it all matters about people. For those of you who don't know, we're heavily into horses and John Wayne and going yee-haw when we chase them. So we're going to hold a rally at Queen's Park, and we went down and we asked if, because it was a weekend, we could bring some horses down. No. And I said, okay, who might we talk to? And no. And then who could we talk? And no. So finally, and I'm not trying to be anything but, this guy comes who had about my weight, just half my height, and said, well, I'm the head of security here, and I hear you're creating trouble. I said, I don't really want to create trouble. I just want to see if I can get permission to bring some horses down. He said, absolutely not. Only the RCMP is allowed to have horses at Queen's Park. And then he says, well, why are you coming? And I said, well, we're from up there, and the Pine River is a concern, and we want to bring this to the attention of the political spectrum here. Pine River. I ride my motorcycle along River Road, along the Pine River. No problem on the weekend. Over here, you can have the parking lot in the back. And that's what allowed us to have horses at Queen's Park. I can challenge you to find any other group who has horses at Key part for us to be able to elevate the issue was, as a board, we never wanted to control the message. So we had people who organized a paddle down the Grand into Waterloo because water connects us all. All we did is supply the signs, some expertise and talking points, but we let them have their day. And by being able to let people around the message have their own way of expressing it, just created a lot of enthusiasm because they weren't there to be told what to say or what to do or how to behave. So that was a big thing for us. One story, last one before, to just what community and what energy around an issue can create. So we had food stock. Big thank you goes to the Canadian Chefs Congress. Without them, that would not have been possible. It was a big event. 29 or 8,000 people showed up in Dave Vander Zag's bush for barbecue. Details.
Stop for 1 second there. 28,000 people on a rainy day. You were there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was with Dave.
Thank you. You made it happen, yes.
And I was just with Dave on Tuesday morning at the farm, and the woods have never been the same.
And it couldn't have been colder
But-
and wetter.
It couldn't get colder or wetter. That was literally the moment that a $28 billion Boston hedge fund turned tail and said, if this can happen on this kind of day, we're taking our money and we're going home.
Yeah, that was
That's
a big
meta
impetus.
message here.
That's been a
Power of the people.
Power of the people been a big message. So Dave Vander Zag's laneway was really reserved for special guests and emergency services. And Highway 124, we worked with police and everybody, and it was still a complete mess. So I stood at the end of Dave's laneway because everybody wanted to turn in there, and it was my job to say, no, turn around behind me and go back to the designated parking lot. And 15 yards behind me, I had Vicky, who was going to register the people who came in, and I was going to give her a signal if the car was allowed to go through. So I see this van coming, left signal light, I stopped the traffic. I knew who it was. They drove by, I motioned to Vicky, let them in, that's okay. Got busy with the next car. turn around, and all I see is Vicky's butt hanging out the driver's side window. So next car, turn around, she got out of the window and is counting the money. I said, I had seniority there from an organizational point of view, and I said, Vicky, what the hell did you do? And she turned just bright red, and she said, you told me to let them in. I said, well, yeah. Well, not without paying. So, here was Blue Rodeo, Jim Cuddy. Said, honey, you want my 20, you come and get it. She didn't know who they were. Blue Rodeo donated their time, performed in the snow, in the storm, in the rain, and paid to get in. So, there you go.
So the end of the story, that large swatch, their 2,300 acres, was acquired by Bonneville, the company that Tom Eisenhower, one of our directors, runs. They're a farm trust, and they then in turn lease that land back to potato farmers. To this day, it continues to be some of Ontario's very best potato farms. There. And farmers are buying that land. We'll go back to the comments on the water, because while it's sort of tableland right there, when I was just out with Dave, one of the fields has just a little crest in it, a little bump of escarpment rock coming up from underneath it, limestone. And he said, see that right there? And I said, yeah. He said, you know, we talked about apexes earlier this morning. We talked about apexes. This has to be the smallest apex in the world. But literally the water goes different directions from the middle of this field here. And it's a very unique area. The limestone sits about 2 or 3 feet below the farmland. It's the perfect mix of sand and loam. It drains at exactly the right levels to keep the crop moist, but never sitting in water. And it all goes down to the aquifers below, etc. I mean, it's just a remarkable story. Carl, thanks for your work. We're going to move from the escarpment here, and not Yellowstone to Yukon here, but within the Canmore area more specifically. So Jodi, give us a little.
Yeah, you know, so ultimately in the Y2Y region, conservation comes down to specific parcels like it does anywhere. And so we thought we'd tell this story, and I'm really going to reiterate what these two gentlemen just talked about. How do you get a specific corridor? Well, let me just sort of back up here. Just beyond Harvey Heights is Banff National Park. It could be a provincial park, it could be any park, but we know that the more development that's around it, the bigger the problem, right? And so we need to keep them connected to other parks. And so we've got a bigger park down here and down there, but we've got this problem. If any of you have ever been to Banff National Park, it's in the Bow Valley. It's a rare east-west corridor. It's where nations from both sides used to come. They lay down their weapons. They, you know, practice peace talks, exchange salmon and bison. But today, there's Banff National Park, which is only on one side of the river, but unfortunately, Canmore developed all the way across. And so today, we're going to talk a little bit about this and a little bit about this corridor. This is Silvertip Wildlife Corridor, and what was really critical here was to talk, again, not just about the development that was happening, but to actually bring it back to this corridor connects Banff to parks out here. And without this, this looks like it could all be, you know, wildlife habitat. It's too steep. Animals can't move on steep slopes. And so we really needed these places to stay intact. And so we got this developer, Guy Turcotte, who, you know, what's really important here is, again, to move slowly, to empower people to make decisions with information. And so today, Guy Turcotte, as a developer, if you look at their website of Silvertip, is proud that he conserved one of these wildlife corridors. And when he advertises the homes that are in that development, he's advertising the incredible nature around it. And it didn't just take Guy, it took Nature Conservancy Canada, it took the town of Canmore, and it took, you know, going even further back, it took the town of Canmore with biologists actually figuring out and designating where the corridors might be in the larger valley, so that the table was kind of set before the developer ever came. But the reality is this used to be part of Banff. So we are kind of retrofitting nature in a place that used to be protected. And so it goes back to this, it's never forever. And do plans always make a difference? No, right now we're arguing about this piece of land right here, this one little green space. So this is a reservoir. So most animals, although the developer Frank told me, even squirrels can swim, not across this reservoir. This is a piece of provincial land. It's in the town of Canmore's plan as a recreation piece of land because it has a nice trail and people are mountain biking and whatever on it. And, nobody knew it was provincial land. It's also heavily undermined because Canmore, this whole side, don't buy houses on this side. Occasionally houses literally sink into the ground, so do roads, right? They don't have maps burned up. This is heavily undermined. But the province came in, and the province of Alberta, I don't know what it's like in this province, but so they're managing the public lands, and they can rent it to anyone without any public hearing. So I sit on, this is Quarry Lakes. I sit on a foundation that owns 50% of Quarry Lakes. Nobody told us that this was gonna be rented out. They didn't tell the town, even though it sits in the town city limits. And they rented it for $1,000 a year to a developer to develop this. Right? And so I say, here it is, it's in a very obvious designated wildlife corridor, and yet, even though it's been agreed upon by everyone, a developer comes in and cracks it open and creates chaos again. And so these are the kinds of things that happen over and over and over again. And I agree with you. I think the idea of conservation of the escarpment means paying attention forever, because someone's gonna have a great idea. Banff is, we call it the Disneyfication of Banff. Let's put a gondola here. Why don't we put 15 more gondolas up? Let's expand the town site because so many people are coming to Banff. So wait, so is Banff supposed to be developed out until there's no wildlife yet? And so it's a constant conversation and reinforcement of culture that gets to conserving corridors in the long run. And you all are so on it here. It's really great to see.
Amazing. Thanks. Curious for each of you. We get asked this question a lot, but what was the specific turning point? Jodi, you were just speaking. So with Silvertip here, what was the specific turning point where okay, we got this locked in? I'm talking now about the north side of the actual Silvertip here.
Yeah.
What was there a moment, and how did you get to that moment?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of moments there. I think the first moment was actually having a vision for the town to be a nature positive community and actually developing where the wildlife corridors were going to be. That was moment number one.
Right.
Moment number two was when the developer said, I can sell nature. Mm-hmm. Nature has value. I don't know how many of you were in the conservation class.
Who here went to Jeremy Gus this morning?
Yeah. And so he realized that he was going to get more money per development. So he didn't have to put as many houses on because actually the value of fewer homes and more nature was higher than just paving it over with homes. Right. And so I think that was value number two. And value number three was Town Nature Conservancy of Canada. All of the people, I didn't mention it, but all of the people in Canmore coming to the town council and reinforcing that they wanted to keep the wildlife corridors intact really made the difference. So those were the three moments.
On the second point, those who weren't in the finance section this morning, I don't even think Jeremy brought this up, but he used Banff when we were together. The Highline example in New York, you're familiar with the Highline park that was created. Cost something like $130 million. The net boost in property values adjacent to that was $3 billion. So the lift is countless times there, and it's a concept that we're looking at in this area here. How does that work as well? Carl, for you, what was the moment? I mean, I think food stock was certainly one of them, right? For just when you felt like, okay, we're really rounding the corner here. We think we've got this.
Yeah, before that, it was actually the unbelievable engagement we got from politicians who had no business of playing. And Michael Chong, federal PC, raised it in Ottawa. There was a lot of engagement, except the Parti Québécois, who moved motions along to support, raised our level of awareness, and feeding back into their provincial associations and provincial parties that something had to be different. Jim Leverty, I owe him a huge vote of thanks. He gave me all kinds of time. He had a place not far from us, so his access was easy, and he was super approachable. And whatever they do behind the scenes to make us go forward is amazing. So where food stock comes in, I know we're all pressed for time, but Linda Montgomery was a professor of arts at OCAD-U in Toronto. And her class, she charged her class, was making posters that would reflect each artist's impression of this topic. And then, through the Canadian Chefs Congress, those posters found themselves into every downtown restaurant. So if we would go to Queen's Park and say, we want to see you, and we get our official meeting done, and then the minister would say, I don't know what you guys are doing, but I can't even take my wife out to dinner without running into your message. So they were turning points. Food stock.
All out of Little Melanchthon.
And food stock was a key thing. Soup stocks the year after in Toronto in the beaches was 40,000 people was another one. And the real thank you for me goes, there's so many people, and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Jim Bradley at the time, when he was a moving force behind getting an environmental assessment, first one in the province, to be put on a quarry onto that project, and that in effect
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Amazing story. And what about for you with Epping Commons?
Well, I think Epping's is part of a 5-decade story.
Yeah.
And so I think if I look back, I think one of the things that was critical, again, I mentioned, is we were never associated with any political party. Because look at all the different governments we had to work with. We work with anybody who is interested in protecting the escarpment.
And over decades, there's bound to be change.
Constant change. I think also, I look back, I'm very appreciative of the Canadian Environmental Law Association. I always felt that when we had the legal and the political working together as a perfect engine, all pistons working, we could move mountains.
Yeah.
And that was critical, because there were a lot of attacks against us, and they provided protection and allowed us to do a little more extra work. And I think painting the picture that you've all done so well was really important. For example, we have a proposal, a very serious proposal in the Beaver Valley to have a health spa. Well, excuse me, the Beaver Valley is a health spa. And so we have to stay engaged and never give up.
Yeah, great. Let's take some questions. We've got about 5 or 10 minutes before we wrap up. Yes, sir, Bill.
Just a quick comment. I'm here on behalf of the Blue Ridge Sports Club.
Yes.
We've got over 450 members. Next year is 50 years, and we're still here. We still support you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's so
Thank you.
important. Absolutely. Thank you, Bill.
That's amazing.
Great people.
Yes. Yes.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks so much to the three of you. I just want to say thank you for your respective areas, and what strikes me is the really long lens of time, 50 years. Carl, I think, I'm not sure, I didn't get a sense of how many years kind of the quarry.
Yeah, in the end, the rumbling started 2006, and they pulled the application November 2012.
Okay, so kind of in today's day and age, that long lens of time is not very common. And so my question is around, how do you keep the optimism, the hope, And the connection through, not necessarily generations, but through different people leading the charge at different times, because my sense from some other things I'm involved with, it's harder and harder to get volunteers. It's harder and harder to get people's attention and commitment. And I'm just wondering if you have any lessons from your work, or if you're seeing anything now in the younger generation which is making it either optimistic or maybe more challenging going forward.
Jodi?
I'm gonna jump in there real quick. You know, for Y to Y, and in fact, the gentleman in front of you just said it so well. Do you want to say it again?
I was getting overwhelmed by the pessimism and backtracking of environmental pursuits, and your talk today just yanked me out of that pessimism, and I'm enthusiastic again. So,
You're good for another 5 years.
You know, I actually, and I really do believe, I know I'm an optimistic person for sure, but you know, conservation is making tremendous strides forward, and sometimes we focus on the losses, and it's very important to be aware of those losses, but especially in today's world, we need to create hope, and hope is about actually having a vision of where we're going, and so, you know, my daughter's friend, so she grew up half in Montana and half in Alberta, and my daughter's friend is also Canadian American, and she came up to Banff her senior year. She had to do a senior project. She saw a wildlife overpass, and that kid said, called my daughter Remy and said, I need to interview your mom. I need to do an interview, I need to write a paper, and I need to do a mural. And that kid wrote a paper on wildlife corridor, she interviewed me, and then she drew a mural on her high school wall in Bozeman, Montana, and she became the poster child for the new funding for wildlife crossing structures. And so I think there are ways to engage the next gen.
Can I give you an example locally here? A couple of years ago, when we realized that the current Town of Blue Mountains Council knew nothing about the history of Castle Glen, we were trying to bring that forward, get people, can we at least start on a common platform of knowledge? There was a young school child from the Blue Mountains that wrote in quite a wonderful letter, and that prompted council to commission a report that would bring everybody 5 decades of experience there. So kids can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I'd like to address that too, please. We have just a ton of faith in young people. Our biggest resource were masters and doctoral students at various universities. So Highlands would bring us some sort of issue and make us look bad, and I could kick that off to a master's student, and in 48 hours had like a research, footnoted, you name it, answer box that knew everybody. So a fabulous resource. My caution about volunteers of that nature is that don't ask a volunteer to do something that is not within their skill set, because they frustrate and they don't produce anything that your organization can use. Organization ran on the Roberts rules of meetings, because if you don't, it gets out of hand and nobody can stay together. While a clear agreed to mission statement and process in board management was a really helpful thing to do. If it's emotional, you bet. 3 of our board members during and after had heart attacks. So it's an emotional deal. It's a huge draw on people. And the last thing I would say to you for your volunteers, young or old, is give them a timeline. So I need you for 3 months. Everybody is afraid that they get sucked into a project that takes 50 years.
Your husband's have anything to say about that?
So if you can frame that and it's successful, they'll be back, right?
Yeah.
But you got them on the first one, and if you match the skill set to the ask, it's a success for everybody.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna just pick up on your point, it's very important, but I'd like to think drip, drip, we're gonna win. That's what I'm optimistic about. The other day I went up to the Bruce Trail, it goes through my farm, and there was this man building a bench. And I said, oh, well, you must be with the Bruce Trail. And I said, no. He said, I'm here building a bench because my sister, her husband died, and her best friend, her husband died. And I'm building this bench for them because twice a week they like to come to this place and look at the beauty of the Niagara Escarpment. And I thought, well, we are winning. It's taking time, but we've got to, and I think the Indigenous members this morning, we've got to listen carefully.
Yes.
I just say, and we do need to wrap up in a moment here, when a handful of us formed the ECA, we said right off the bat, we are not going to be an organization that's going to meet every Sunday morning and talk about the same things forever. That's just not going to be anything we want to be part of here. And so we went out on a limb and sort of the field of dreams kind of thing, and said we're going to hire staff to be able to help us there, because without that, we are going to burn out as directors. I volunteer my time all over board. We still have a very active board. We're moving to a governance model, but I probably spend 50% of my time on this work. And so if you're not going to burn out, then you have to hire staff. To hire staff, you have to raise funds. To raise funds, you have to have professional messaging, and it doesn't mean you have to have lots of gloss or whatever, but you have to be doing something real, and you have to show meaningful progress. And that's what we've set out to do. We're very cognizant of the fact that even right now, Jarvis has his plate so full right now. How do we expand resources? Well, it takes more funds, unfortunately, to do that. The professionals that help us, from an external basis, lawyers, ecologists, biologists, public relations, government relations, the list goes on and on. Those retainers, if they're on a retainer, or just those fees, are enormous. But without it, you can't possibly move forward, in my opinion. And so I think that's where some of the business acumen of our board has been very helpful, that we're going to try and run it as a professional organization. The non-political thing, when the Talisman organization folded itself into the ECA last year, there had been some animosity between them and the local government. They had sued the local government, and that probably doesn't get you off on the right foot. There was good reasons for it behind it, but it wasn't going to win the battle. It certainly wasn't going to win the war. So we recognized that, and within months, I live in the Blue Mountains. I had not met the mayor, deputy mayor of Grey Highlands, but there was an event, an open forum town hall meeting one night at one of the arenas. And I stayed in the parking lot afterwards until the mayor and deputy mayor came out and introduced myself to them, and they said, "We want to thank you." And I said, "Okay." And they said, the tone, the professionalism in the last 90 days, 120 days, it's just done a 180. We can disagree on certain things, we can want to, or certain things, whatever, but nobody's being called out personally here. There is professional dialogue. There are proactive solutions, alternatives being presented. That's what we want to stand for, and we believe that at the end of the day, that's how you get to success here, because it doesn't matter who's in power. Hopefully, common sense rules the day.
I have just a question about whether or not you were exploring, or the various different organizations have been exploring the concept of making a river a legal person, and how that might be useful to the...
Many people have talked to us about that. We're not there yet. We think that there's a way through this. We feel like we're getting very close. The question on Castle Glen and the water, the groundwater and so on, hugely important. I'll talk in a few minutes about some of this, but we think we're making very good progress with our both local and provincial governments, and have support of the federal government on writing these things that should have, well, Talisman was a thriving, Talisman was a welcomed and wanted part of the community, as it was for a long time now, right? But now it's been 20 years, and to be able to put something new on that site, the zoning would say, without a recreational amenity there, like the ski hill, then there's no opportunity to build there, or to expand anything that's on there. So we, Talisman's a little bit of a different story. Castle Glen's still a pristine environment, but on both fronts, we have very, very constructive dialogue going on. We think that there will be solutions. This is a long game. I don't want to set anybody's expectations, I don't know if anybody here has $30–40 million that they'd like to offer before we leave the room, but I'm all ears if you do. Can you lock the door there, Chris?
Is that what the Larkin family would need to buy Castle Glen, or is it no longer the Larkins?
No, it's Great Gulf Homes, one of
Okay.
North America's largest developers, bought the property in
Okay.
2001. That was the reason that the ECA was actually formed. A couple of us that have been battling when Michael Larkin owned the property, but then going to the OMB in 2004. Again, decades. That property has had an application of one form or another for 55 years now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I live on Timmins Street and it's very close to Silver Creek.
Yes,
We're surrounded by wetlands.
correct.
There's a master plan, a drainage master plan proposed.
Yes.
I'm a little surprised that, here is a storm management engineers, and they have a certain culture, a certain way of doing things. I wonder, like, we have so many wetlands who pick up the water, do it naturally. Yeah, where's the status of the wetlands? They have a function, and it works naturally. With all these man-made solutions, I believe like anybody presents a master plan, that should be massive input of somebody who knows the hydrological natural system and work together with it.
It's been a travesty there. I mean, for a while it looked like it had been overturned, that development, and now it's back at the Ontario Land Tribunal. There where the developers pushing again. Wetlands are part of complexes. Silver Creek originates, of course, in Castle Glen, and the terminus is in your area by your house there. That is a complex. Now, Bill 5 recently severed the notion of complexes, as I understand it, here, so that they're looked at in isolation. That's like the species at risk bill, where the habitat for a bird is considered its nest now. I mean, so it's some challenging, very challenging aspects to what's going on right now, and we're very hopeful that common sense will prevail. That's a terrible place to build homes because it's a terrible.
I'm very fortunate that
Chris,
I have a
we
crawl
done?
space, but
No.
lots of others have a basement 24/7.
Yes. Yeah, no, and it's so dry right now.
That lasts only very shortly, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, Georgian Bay, there's 6 feet of water difference that happens in a very short period of time. Yes?
I was just going to say, I'm involved with the Huntingwood Trails East,
Yes.
fighting the East development through the Watershed Trust. The
Yeah.
conundrum, and we're at the OLT,
Yeah.
we're a party, we've hired the best hydrological engineering company around, Greenland Consulting. Greenland Consulting is the company the town of Collingwood has hired to do all of their stormwater management master planning. Okay, so the NDCA is behind Greenland Consulting with respect to the stormwater management for the town of Collingwood. However, on this development, despite the council voting down the application, the town is in the process of trying to negotiate a settlement with the developer where the hydrological modeling is provided by Crozier, a one-dimensional model which does not capture all the spillage. So I don't want to use the word conflict or hypocrisy, is that while the town is using the best modeling possible to say, hey, let's protect the town from flooding, on this particular development, which is right in the middle, where they're going to build a bridge and a road to go right across the Silver Creek in the floodplain, they're not using the best tools to protect the public trust. So there's the ability to influence the politicians, to influence the staff who are using NBCA's or Grace Harbor Conservation Authority as their peer review. There's a real conflict there that you thought would have been pretty straightforward, but it certainly isn't.
It certainly, highlights again the importance of and the potential impact that each and every one of us has with our politicians, and something that I believe strongly in. The alliance word in our name here. We work very closely with the Watershed Trust and so many other organizations, and trying to go to our politicians with a larger voice, a more unified voice can be helpful. But these situations, they keep cropping up. The vigilance that's required. To somebody's point about how draining this is, it's exceptionally draining to be fighting against something all the time, and that's where it is so important in your advice. I'm listening here, taking lessons and thinking about some of the things that we're doing, and how do we always make sure that that vision piece is driving us forward, because we know that there's something really worthwhile that we're pursuing here. Without that, hope can turn into hopelessness quite quickly. Do we have one last question?
Yeah, I'm from Meaford.
Yes.
Patrimony.
Yes.
We've got a pretty big battle going on with
On storage project?
Yeah, with
LTC?
Trans-Canada Energy.
Yes.
And we have Owen Sound and Meaford, and local municipalities are voting for it.
Yeah.
And then we have other municipalities like Tiny and Archipelago and stuff are voting against it. I've sent letters, I've talked to people on council. How do you, when you're giving them a lot of facts and simple facts that can't be disputed on the disadvantages of something like that, a big thing on Niagara Escarpment, how do you talk to the municipalities? How do you swing them around?
I
Where
think
they just won't listen, where they just won't listen.
Yeah. I think the resilience factor is important. If in fact there are facts underpinning, it's like I always say, and I do, most of my work is in the management world, and I sort of leadership work with entrepreneurs and their teams, and at so many points in time, it seems like your point of view and my point of view are so far apart. I believe if we step back far enough, you gain perspective, and those points at some point cross. But the only way that makes a difference is if underneath they're underpinned by facts. Where that intersection has to be underpinned by facts. If your facts are the right facts, then please don't give up, because at some point in time, somebody will recognize that. I would also, just my 2 bits there is, if a message isn't getting across one way to one person, find a different message or find a different vector, and get creative. I mean, we get locked in sometimes, and we got to sway so-and-so. Sometimes it's something completely different. It might be that grade 2, student that turns things around, that can say it way more articulately than you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's
Thank
just
you
something
very
to throw out there. Folks, thank you very much. It's amazing. They're not quite done. Does anybody have one last question? Okay, well, thank you all. We're going to take a short break, and then, but don't stray too far, because we are a little behind. We've got a great final session for you.